I actually think it's your fault, because the bigger process question is why on earth Epsom is dragged into this at the last minute, and that isn't your fault. Dr. Alford at Bourne Hall just said you're part of a London trust and there's nothing you can do about it, but your problem, as you're going to find when you eventually, with respect, get round to looking at the travel data, is what I said to him at Bourne Hall, and that is, yes, but Epsom is not part of London geographically, and this is... There's nothing you can do about that. But therein lies the problem, seriously. And for example, because we were dragged in, and this is all about process, at the last minute, you in your presentations to everybody, you put 500 plus lives can be saved in London and Epsom by reconfiguration. Epsom just added on at the last minute. Now, I understand that in London, where you've got geographically another option very close, this may be fine, but we don't, and it's been added in. So we then asked first Dr. Alford, then under Freedom of Information Act, and your commissioning support unit in South West London, nobody had the figures. Dr. Plant at the Southern CCG last week, when we asked about this, said, oh well, we didn't want to mention individual hospitals' figures because the public might get worried. Now, I know, I mean, that's a fair point, but then under FOI, why wasn't the response, this isn't in the public interest? The public bodies, if they think it's going to be alarming, don't have to give information. So we looked into this further, and the majority of you can quite easily get onto Dr. Foster. I can't, but I have now the BMJ journal, which talks about the study and the questions raised about whether you do have to have consultant cover. This is why this originated, the reconfiguration. But I also got the figures for the 5 hospitals, and Epsom St Helier at 90% mortality, well below the average. And so that really looks to me, I'm sorry, I've been, as you know, I've sent you evidence all the way through this so that you're aware of things you haven't had time to collect. But no, they've only had, no.
Rosemary, I'm sorry, what's the question?
The question is, were these figures not included because it actually shows that Epsom, and there isn't a reason for reorganising because our mortality figures are so much lower. Also under process, I would like to know why in the presentation that you did for the GPs a week or so ago, and in the public, you put that you've asked 100 or so clinicians and groups, and this is how you've consulted, but nowhere do you record that the majority of the Epsom St Helier staff were in agreement, and as you've heard today, thought a lot of things were unsafe. You don't put that forward in your presentation. And last thing, under process, why in the survey that you sent out to the public about a midwife-led unit, do you quote the birthplace study, which says that for low-risk mothers, it's safe to have a standalone unit, but you don't also put that 40%, as Dr. Evans doesn't seem to know, 40% of first-time mothers have to be transferred, and then we're back to the question about geographically where we are. I asked somebody from CCAM yesterday in Epsom when he was going to buy pizzas or something. I did say apologies for this. I said to him, how long does it take you under a blue light in rush hour to get to George's? He said it can take up to an hour. Ask please Dr. Shahata how long you've got when things go wrong in labour, because he's the expert. That's enough.
Been forward for